The book was written by J.D. Salinger and published in 1951, so it most likely took place in 1949. We begin with our protagonist, Holden Caulfield. So the story begins with Holden, who's standing on a hill by a football field, trying to feel some sort of goodbye. He just flunked out his third prep school, so it's already not a great start. So Holden goes to say goodbye to his history teacher, who reads his exam out loud to him and tells him how crappy it is the whole time.
Right, his strong desire to protect the innocence in children is a wish where he voices as a fantasy of being the catcher in the rye, who serves to save them from falling off a cliff into the corrupted world. And as Holden's mental state deteriorates, the story comes to an end with him in a psychiatric institution that suggests a delicate chance of healing.
The novel's great impact arises from its capture of a specific historical moment. Published in the post-World War II era of the 1950s, it challenged the period's overwhelming emphasis on conformity and consumerism. Holden's voice hinged the unspoken tension and rebellion brewing beneath the surface of prosperity, aligning with the rise of the teenager as a separate social identity.
Yet its genuine, informal storytelling and candid explorations of subjects such as sexuality and mental distress challenged literary norms, establishing it as a significant piece of contemporary literature and a constant target for censorship. In essence, The Catcher in the Rye became a defining novel of adolescent alienation, giving an enduring expression to the pain of growing up in a world that was perceived as deeply inauthentic.
Okay, let's start with alienation as self-protection. Holden was at Pansy Prep, right? He's feeling completely out of place, and he said, it was full of phonies, and you could smell it a mile away. He looks around and he decides everyone is a phony, like Stradlater, Eckley, and a whole bunch of people. But here's the thing. That's not just a teenage attitude. It is his shield by calling people fake. And Holden keeps them at arm's length. If you don't let anyone in, they can't disappoint you. It makes sense, but it backfires.
Exactly. That defense mechanism ends up leaving him even more isolated. And the thing is that the isolation doesn't stay at Pansy. It follows him right out the door and straight into New York.
Holden is 16, lives in New York, and he has an older brother named Davey who moves to Hollywood to write movies, which Holden resents because he hates the movie and he thinks Hollywood is phony. And we soon to find out that actually Holden thinks a lot of things and people are phony. Almost everything. And he also had a younger brother named Ellie who died from an illness when Holden was 13. He has a 10-year-old sister named Phoebe, who never fails to make him laugh.
Alienation isn't always about hating people, and it's often about staying safe. Like teens today may delete Instagram or ghost friends to avoid judgment. And it feels like control, but it leads to loneliness. That's what Holden does in The Catcher in the Rye. He calls everyone phony so he doesn't have to trust anyone, and if he doesn't trust anyone, he cannot get hurt. But the more he pushes people away, the more isolated he becomes. It sounds familiar, right?
So here's what's really happening. At Pansy, Holden builds these emotional walls by calling everyone phony. He thinks that keeping people at a distance will protect him. Makes sense in theory, right? But then he leaves for New York, and those same walls comes with him. Instead of finding freedom, he ends up wandering the city, looking for connection and failing every time. It's like the harder he tries to protect himself, the lonelier he becomes.
So the second theme we're gonna talk about is preservation of innocence. Let's start with Holden's big dream, The Catcher in the Rye. When he explains it to Phoebe in chapter 22, it sounds almost poetic, and he imagines standing in the Rye field, catching kids before they fall off a cliff. Pretty dramatic, right?
Yeah, but that cliff isn't just a cliff, it's adulthood. Holden sees growing up as this dangerous drop into corruption and phoniness. So in his mind, saving kids from falling means saving their innocence. It's his way of fighting everything he hates about the adult world.
Exactly, that shift is huge. He goes from wanting control, catching every kid before they fall, to accepting that innocence cannot be preserved forever. All he can do is value it when he sees it. Honestly, that's one of the most hopeful parts of the book.
As a matter of fact, Holden recalls Allie's baseball glove, covered with poems in Chapter 5. The flashback of Allie's death and baseball glove reveals his deep emotional attachment to Allie and his inability to cope with his brother's death from leukemia.
So back in his dorm room, Holden's roommate tells Holden to write a composition for him for nothing in return. And Holden ends up writing the composition, but instead of writing it about a room like he's supposed to, he writes it about his brother Allie's baseball glove. And his roommates come back from his date, and he's like, what the hell is this? So after that, Holden decides to leave Pansy Prep, and he hops on the train to New York. He finds a hotel, but because he's bored and not tired yet, so he visits a nightclub lying about his age, of course. After that, he sits in the lobby and thinks a lot about Jane, as usual. He remembers this one time that he and Jane were playing checkers, and then she started crying about her lousy stepfather. So Holden started to kiss her, but Jane wouldn't let him kiss her mouth because Holden didn't even ask for her consent.
Yes, the flashback yet reinforces innocence and Holden's desire to protect it, as well as his inability to move forward emotionally.
So Holden's red hunting hat. Holden calls his hat silly, but he wears it anyway, and he even likes to wear it backwards. This demonstrates that he's social outcast, but the hat also offers a cover. It protects him from the cruel world outside and the world he has to join eventually.
In conclusion, The Catcher in the Rye is far more than a simple narrative of teenage rebellion. It is a profound and enduring exploration of the psychological landscape of adolescence, masterfully woven into its specific historical moment through Holden Caulfield's first-person account of alienation and his desperate fantasy of preserving innocence. J.D. Salinger captures the universal anguish of growing up while critiquing the conformist ethos of post-war America. The novel's enduring power stems from this potent fusion of intimate character study and broader cultural commentary. Holden's journey from Pansy Prep to the streets of New York and finally to a psychiatric institution vividly illustrates how alienation functions as a flawed mechanism of self-protection.
So, have you ever noticed how he calls everyone phony? That's not just snark, it's strategy. Because by judging and sabotaging relationships like with Sally Hayes, Holden builds walls to protect himself. But here's the kicker. Those walls trap him in isolation and despair. Now, dig deeper. His grief for Allie is like the engine behind his obsession with innocence. That dream of being a catcher in the rye, saving kids from falling to adulthood, and that peaceful moment watching Phoebe on a carousel, those aren't random. They're Holden clinging to a world he wishes he could freeze. So Salinger nails this with flashbacks, like Allie's baseball glove, Jane Gallagher's checkers game, those tiny tender details that root Holden's turmoil in real losses. So here's the big question for you. Is Holden trying to protect innocence or escape the reality? And we need to think about it.
So while having these rich symbolisms like the red haunting hat, the Museum of Natural History, and the carousel, these externalizes his inner conflict between individuality and belonging, moreover between a desire for permanence and the inevitability of change. While the novel ends with a subtle hint of recovery, its lasting legacy is its unflinching and empathetic portrait of the alienation that can arise when protecting one's fragile self from a seemingly fallen world. So I guess that's all for today, and we're gonna stop here. Thank you.